I walked through the door holding a bouquet of roses and a bottle of champagne, excitement coursing through my veins. Today was our 15th anniversary, and I had come home early to surprise Sarah. My heart skipped when I noticed 2 cars in our driveway, Sarah's sedan and an unfamiliar black Audi. When my twin daughters answered the door, their faces paled. Mom's really sick and sleeping. Lily blurted nervously while Emma nodded vigorously. Something felt off, especially when I heard sounds coming from our upstairs bedroom. Let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe to follow my journey through the most devastating betrayal of my life. My name is Igor Reynolds, a 42-year-old software engineer who climbed the corporate ladder from humble beginnings. I grew up in a small apartment with hardworking parents who taught me the value of persistence. During my sophomore year at university, I met Sarah in a computer science elective. She was studying human resources management, and we clicked instantly. Her infectious laugh and ambitious spirit drew me in, and after graduation we tied the knot in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. Over the next 2 decades, we built what I thought was a perfect life. Our suburban home in a good school district, my career as a software architect at a respected tech company, and Sarah's position as an HR manager at a marketing firm all painted the picture of success. Our twin daughters, Lily and Emma, were 17 now and heading to college next year. What many people did not know was that the twins were not biologically mine. Shortly before our wedding, Sarah confessed to a brief affair. I was devastated but chose forgiveness, legally adopting the girls after their birth and raising them as my own. I never treated them differently or mentioned this fact. They were my daughters in every way that mattered. To provide the life we all wanted, I worked grueling hours, often taking overseas assignments for the additional compensation. These trips meant weeks away from my family, but video calls and weekend trips home when possible helped maintain our connection. Every sacrifice seemed worthwhile when I saw our comfortable home funded their extracurricular activities and saved for their college education. 6 months ago, Sarah was promoted to work directly under James Tucker, the new vice president of HR at her company. She started staying late at work, changing her wardrobe to more stylish and expensive clothing, and becoming increasingly protective of her phone. Whenever it chimed with notifications, she would quickly grab it and often leave the room to respond. These changes planted seeds of suspicion in my mind, but I pushed them away. After forgiving her previous indiscretion and building 20 years of marriage, I wanted to believe in our commitment. Besides, Sarah had been a devoted wife and mother since that pre-marriage mistake. Perhaps this new job was simply demanding more of her time and attention to detail. For our 15th anniversary, I planned something special. My business trip to Seattle was scheduled to end the day after our anniversary, but I arranged to finish early, catching a red-eye flight to surprise her. I purchased a bouquet of roses identical to her wedding flowers and a bottle of her favorite champagne. I imagined her face lighting up when I appeared unexpectedly ready to celebrate our milestone together. The night before, I called home as usual. Sarah mentioned having a team meeting the next evening, but should be home by 7. The girls said they would be studying at friends' houses, but promised to be back for dinner to celebrate our anniversary the following weekend when I was supposed to return. Everything seemed normal, setting the stage perfectly for my surprise. As my taxi pulled into our driveway at 6 in the evening, I noticed Sarah's car already there, along with an unfamiliar black Audi, with a company parking permit hanging from the rearview mirror. Perhaps she had invited colleagues over to work from home, or maybe one of them had driven her back when her meeting ended early. I did not think much of it, as I grabbed my gifts and headed to the front door. When the front door opened to reveal both my daughters standing there with matching expressions of shock, my first instinct was confusion. They were supposed to be at friends' houses studying. "Dad," Emma exclaimed, "you are not supposed to be home until tomorrow." "I wanted to surprise your mom for our anniversary," I explained, showing them the flowers and champagne. "Is that someone from her work here?" The girls exchanged a quick glance that sent a chill down my spine. Something was wrong. Mom is really sick. Lily jumped in. She came home early with a terrible migraine and is sleeping upstairs. "You probably should not disturb her right now." Emma nodded vigorously. "Yeah, she took some strong medication and finally fell asleep." Maybe we could all go out for dinner and let her rest. Their behavior was strange enough, but then I heard a thump from upstairs followed by what sounded like hushed voices. If Sarah was sleeping off a migraine with medication, she would not be talking. I should check on her, I said, moving toward the stairs. Emma quickly stepped in front of me. Dad, seriously, she was in really bad shape. The noise is probably just the television in the bedroom. She likes to have background noise when she has migraines. My suspicions fully awakened now. I gently moved past my daughter. I will just peek in to make sure she is okay. Dad, wait. Lily called after me, panic evident in her voice. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding harder with each step. Outside our bedroom door, I paused, hearing definite movement inside. Pushing the door open without knocking, my worst fears materialized before my eyes. There was my wife in our bed with a man I recognized as James Tucker, her boss. They scrambled to cover themselves with the sheets, but the evidence was unmistakable. The champagne bottle slipped from my fingers, crashing onto the hardwood floor. Igor, Sarah gasped. You were supposed to be in Seattle until tomorrow. James was already grabbing his clothes from the floor. I should go, he muttered, not meeting my eyes. Yes, you absolutely should, I replied, my voice eerily calm, despite the hurricane of emotions tearing through me. And take the back stairs. My daughters have already been traumatized enough by covering for you two. Sarah's face paled even further. The girls do not know anything, she insisted weakly. Stop lying, Sarah. They just tried everything to keep me from coming upstairs. I turned to James. You have 30 seconds to get out of my house before I call your wife and the company board simultaneously. As James hurriedly dressed and slipped past me, I stood frozen, staring at my wife of 15 years. Behind me, I heard the girls at the bedroom doorway. They whispered, Mom. We tried to stop him, confirming my suspicion of their involvement. I turned to face my daughter's disbelief and betrayal washing over me. How long have you known about this? Their silence and averted gazes told me everything. How long, I demanded more firmly. Emma, always, the bolder one, spoke first. A few months. Mom explained that she and James have a connection and that sometimes adults need to figure things out, and you both thought it was okay to lie to me, to help her cheat. She said you were never around anyway, Lily murmured, that you cared more about your work trips than us. The unfairness of this accusation struck me like a physical blow. Those work trips had been to provide for them, to ensure they had everything they needed and wanted. Get out, I told Sarah, my voice shaking with rage. Go to the guest room. I cannot even look at you right now. After Sarah left, still wrapped in our bedsheet, I confronted my daughters in the hallway. Show me your phones, I demanded. That is invasion of privacy, Emma protested. Your privacy ended when you participated in destroying this family. Phones. Now. Reluctantly, they handed them over. A quick search through their messages revealed dozens of texts between them and their mother, coordinating alibis, warning about my calls, and even messages about how to keep James's car hidden when I was expected to call via video. There were jokes about Mom's special friend and comments about how they might get to vacation in his beach house if things worked out. My own flesh and blood, or so I had raised them to be, had actively participated in betraying me for months. The depth of the deception left me breathless. I locked myself in the guest room that night, ignoring the knocks and pleas from both Sarah and the girls. Sleep was impossible as I scrolled through more messages, building a clearer picture of the elaborate deception. This was not a one-time mistake, but a calculated affair with my daughters as willing accomplices. The foundation of trust upon which I had built my entire adult life had just crumbled beneath me. The next morning, I called a family meeting in the living room. My night of sleeplessness had given way to a cold resolve. No one had slept well, judging by the puffy eyes and tense postures as Sarah and the twins gathered on the sofa across from me. I want explanations, I stated flatly. Starting with you, Sarah. She sighed dramatically. Igor, I know this looks terrible, but it is not what you think. James and I, it is just physical. It does not mean anything. Just physical, I repeated incredulously. That is supposed to make it better, and involving our daughters in your lies. They are practically adults, Sarah defended. They understand that relationships are complicated. Besides, you are never around anyway. Always on some business trip or working late. Emma nodded beside her mother. Dad, you are barely home. Mom was lonely. The irony was crushing. I work those hours and take those trips to give us the life you all wanted. The vacations, the private tennis lessons, the new cars for your 16th birthdays, none of that comes free. We did not ask for those things, Lily countered. We would rather have had you present. Interesting timing for that sentiment, I replied. Especially since last month you both insisted on attending that expensive music festival that required me to take an extra project to afford the VIP passes you absolutely needed. Their silence confirmed my point. But this goes beyond the affair, I continued, turning to Sarah. While checking the phones last night, I noticed bank alerts. You have been moving money from our joint accounts. Sarah's expression hardened. I needed to prepare. I was going to tell you after the girls graduated in a few months. The calculated nature of it all stunned me. So I was just the financial provider until you were ready to leave. Is that what our 20 years together meant? Do not be so dramatic, Sarah dismissed. You will be fine. You have your career. James is actually really cool, Emma interjected. He takes Mom to concerts and art shows. Stuff you never want to do. He has a beach house in Florida, Lily added. And a boat. I stared at my family, these strangers who had been plotting behind my back. So this is about money and entertainment. I have been replaced by someone with better vacation properties. It is about feeling alive again, Sarah insisted. Besides, you are not completely innocent either. What about that female colleague you were always texting 3 years ago? Jennifer from the Dallas office. I could not believe what I was hearing. Jennifer is married with 4 kids. We were working on a project together. There was never anything inappropriate between us. You seemed pretty friendly, Sarah pressed, always laughing at her jokes during video conferences. I realized then that Sarah had been nurturing this grievance as justification for her betrayal. A friendly professional relationship had been twisted in her mind to rationalize her affair. This is unbelievable, I said. You are trying to make me the villain in this scenario. You checked out emotionally years ago, Sarah accused. Always buried in work, distant when you are home. And if that were true, the solution was to cheat rather than communicate, to turn our daughters against me. They made their own judgments, Sarah replied coldly. And by the way, since we are laying everything out, you should know that I will be entitled to half of everything in the divorce. Your precious retirement fund, the house, everything. My attorney already confirmed it. The threat was the final straw. I stood up, grabbing my keys. I will be staying with Paul for a while. I need space from all of you. As I packed a bag, the girls watched from my bedroom doorway, their expressions mixed anger with uncertainty. You are just going to leave, prove Mom right, that you always run away, Emma challenged. I am not running away, I corrected her. I am giving myself space to think clearly before I say or do something I might regret. Something that apparently none of you considered doing before betraying me. I left the house with the bitter knowledge that the family I had sacrificed everything for had been plotting my disposal for months. The drive to my brother's place was a blur of pain and disbelief. Paul's spare bedroom became my sanctuary for the following week. My brother, 5 years older and divorced himself, offered both space and invaluable advice. First thing tomorrow, you need to see a lawyer, he insisted that first night. Sarah has clearly been planning this. You need to protect yourself. The next morning I met with Jessica Harmon, a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague who had gone through a similar situation. Her office was warm but professional, her demeanor sympathetic but practical. Before we discuss anything else, Mr. Reynolds, did you have a prenuptial agreement? She asked after hearing my situation. Yes, I confirmed. When we married, Sarah had student debt, and I had just received a sizable signing bonus from my first tech job. My parents insisted we protect it. Jessica nodded. Do you have a copy? I produced the document from my briefcase. My brother had reminded me to grab important papers when I briefly returned home for more clothes while Sarah was at work. Jessica reviewed it carefully, then looked up with the first good news I had heard in days. This contains a strong infidelity clause. If proven, Sarah would forfeit claims to alimony and certain asset divisions. She seemed very confident about getting half of everything I noted. She likely forgot about this clause or assumed it would be difficult to prove, Jessica explained. Many people sign prenups when young and forget the details. But with your evidence, the text messages from your daughters discussing the affair, plus any other documentation we can gather, we have a strong case. She recommended hiring a private investigator to document the ongoing relationship. Judges appreciate thorough evidence, and given the coordination and duration of the affair, this was not a one-time mistake but a calculated deception. Over the next few days, the investigator gathered photos of Sarah and James meeting for lunches, entering hotels, and even documented them spending an entire weekend together at his beach house, the very one my daughters had mentioned, so admiringly. Meanwhile, I met with our financial advisor to review our accounts. The meeting revealed more disturbing news. Sarah had been gradually moving funds to a private account for months, totaling nearly $30,000. She had also recently updated her beneficiary information on her company life insurance policy, removing me entirely. This level of financial preparation suggests long-term planning, Jessica observed when I shared these findings. It works in our favor legally, but I understand it is another emotional blow. My brother and my one loyal friend Troy formed my support system. Troy had gone through his own divorce years earlier and offered practical advice about rebuilding. The hardest part is accepting that the person you thought you knew had this capacity for deception, he shared during a long walk. But once you process that, you can start rebuilding on more solid ground. Through these conversations, I began confronting my feelings of inadequacy and failure. Had I been too absent? Should I have noticed the signs earlier? But gradually, with their perspective, I came to recognize that while no marriage is perfect, Sarah's choices were her own. Her decision to cheat rather than communicate and to involve our daughters in the deception reflected her character, not my failings. What about the girls? I asked Jessica during our third meeting. Legally, they are adults in a few months. But emotionally, that is a separate journey, she advised gently. Right now, focus on protecting yourself legally. The emotional reconciliation, if possible, comes later. With my team's guidance, I formulated a plan. Rather than allowing Sarah to control the narrative and timeline, I would take decisive action. The prenuptial agreement gave me leverage she did not expect. The evidence gathered provided legal protection. And perhaps most importantly, I was reclaiming agency in a situation where I had been made powerless. 2 weeks after discovering the affair, I was ready to confront the future on my terms. I returned to our house on a Tuesday evening, knowing Sarah and both girls would be home for dinner. The private investigator had confirmed their locations, and my timing was deliberate. Under my arm, I carried a folder containing divorce papers prepared by Jessica. When I walked in, the three of them were seated at the dining table, a scene of domestic normalcy that now felt like a theatrical performance. Their conversation halted abruptly when they saw me. Igor, Sarah recovered first, her tone carefully modulated to sound both concerned and slightly victimized. "We were worried about you." I doubt that I replied calmly, placing the folder on the table. "These are divorce papers. You might want to read them carefully, particularly the sections referencing our prenuptial agreement." Sarah frowned, opening the folder. As she scanned the documents, her expression transformed from confusion to shock. "This cannot be legal. The prenup was from 20 years ago." "It is entirely legal," I confirmed. "The infidelity clause you apparently forgot about is quite clear. Given the extensive evidence of your affair with James, including witness statements, photographs, hotel receipts, and text messages from our daughters coordinating your meetings, the clause is fully enforceable." "Evidence," Emma interrupted. "You had us followed." "No," I clarified. "I hired professionals to document an affair that was already happening in plain sight. An affair you both were active participants in concealing." Sarah was frantically flipping through the documents. "This says, I forfeit claims to alimony and primary residence. This would leave me with almost nothing compared to what I am legally entitled to. What you were legally entitled to before you violated the terms of our agreement." Corrected. "Your attorney apparently did not do their due diligence in reviewing our prenuptial agreement." Lily began crying, while Emma's face flushed with anger. You cannot just throw Mom out. Where is she supposed to go? That is not my concern anymore, I said, feeling a strange calm, despite the emotional storm around me. Perhaps James has room at his beach house, the one you both seem so impressed by. You are being cruel, Sarah accused. After 20 years together, this is how you treat me. Over one mistake that lasted months involved, elaborate planning, financial deception, and corrupting our daughters, I countered. And let us be clear, I am not the one who threw away 20 years. You did that the moment you decided to betray not just our marriage, but to turn our family against me. We can work through this, Sarah suddenly suggested, her tone switching to conciliatory. For the girl's sake, we could try counseling. I almost laughed at the transparency of her pivot once she understood her financial situation. The time for that was before you started sleeping with your boss in our bed. Later that same week, I changed the locks on a small commercial property I had owned before our marriage. This building, which I rented to a local business, had been my first investment and was solely in my name. Sarah had never shown interest in it, considering it too small to matter in our portfolio. I also met with my attorney to change my will, removing Sarah and the girls as beneficiaries. Instead, I designated charities supporting foster children and my brother as my heirs. Jessica advised me on creating a new power of attorney and healthcare directive, removing Sarah from these roles as well. What about college for the girls? I asked her. You are not legally obligated to pay for their college, especially given their age and involvement in the situation, Jessica explained. However, if you choose to provide support, we can structure it as direct payments to the institutions rather than giving them access to funds. When Sarah discovered these changes, particularly the will modification which my attorney had explicitly informed her of, she launched a campaign to reconcile. Suddenly, my phone filled with messages about how we could work things out, how the affair had been a terrible mistake, and how she had always loved me. The girls' tactics shifted as well. Their messages alternated between angry accusations that I was being vindictive and tearful pleas to reconsider for the sake of our family. It was emotionally exhausting, but my resolve remained firm. The most unexpected development came when I received a call from a woman named Jennifer, not my former colleague, but James's wife. Is this Igor Reynolds? She asked when I answered. Yes. Who is this Jennifer Tucker, James's wife? Or soon-to-be ex-wife, I should say. She had discovered the affair independently, but had pieced together my identity from details in James's emails. We met for coffee, two strangers united by the same betrayal. He told me he was working late all those nights. She shared her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. I found receipts for jewelry I never received, hotels I never stayed in. Our conversation formed an unusual alliance. We shared information, compared timelines, and even coordinated our legal strategies to ensure both Sarah and James faced appropriate consequences for their actions. They thought they were so clever, Jennifer observed bitterly, but they never considered we might compare notes. The fallout from my actions rippled through our social circles and extended family. Sarah, realizing the prenup would be enforced, began damage control by spreading her version of events. According to her narrative, I had been emotionally absent for years, driving her to seek connection elsewhere. She painted herself as the victim of a controlling husband who was now vindictively punishing her for one mistake. Some mutual friends chose sides immediately. Those who had only known me through Sarah predictably aligned with her. But others who had seen my dedication to my family over the years were more skeptical of her sudden characterization of me as controlling. I followed my attorney's advice to remain publicly silent about the details. Let the legal process work, Jessica counseled. Engaging in public mudslinging only complicates matters. However, I did share evidence selectively with key individuals, my parents, Sarah's brother, who had always been fair-minded, and two couples who had been our closest friends throughout our marriage. These strategic disclosures helped counterbalance Sarah's narrative and maintain some crucial support. The girls' school performance began suffering, with both missing assignments and Lily skipping classes entirely. When the school counselor called me, she mentioned that the girls blamed their academic struggles on my abandonment of the family. I arranged a meeting with the counselor to provide context without villainizing their mother, a delicate balance that left me emotionally drained. My brother Paul remained my strongest advocate, even when Sarah attempted to turn him against me by claiming I had rejected reasonable compromise offers. She called me crying yesterday. He informed me over dinner at his place. Said you were refusing mediation and determined to leave her destitute. Did you remind her that she was the one planning to leave me once the girls graduated? I asked. Or that she has been secretly moving money for months? I did, he confirmed with a grim smile. She hung up pretty quickly after that. At work, complications arose when rumors began circulating. Both Sarah's company and mine had several overlapping business connections, and James had apparently been sharing his own spin on events with industry colleagues. My manager called me in for an uncomfortable conversation about keeping personal matters from affecting professional relationships. I have not discussed my divorce at work, I assured him. Whatever you have heard came from other sources. He seemed satisfied with my response, especially when I provided documentation of my consistent performance metrics throughout this difficult period. Still, the situation underscored how far-reaching the consequences of Sarah's actions had become. Despite maintaining external composure privately, I struggled with profound loneliness and frequent second-guessing. The family home, where I had returned, while Sarah relocated to a rental property, felt cavernous and empty. Rooms that had once held laughter now echoed with absence. Each night I questioned whether I was being too harsh, whether I should have tried harder to salvage some part of our family. These moments of doubt were counterbalanced by reminders of the betrayal, like discovering additional evidence of Sarah's planning when clearing out her home office or receiving a message from one of the girls complaining about having to share a bedroom in their mother's new apartment. Support came from unexpected places. Several parents of my daughter's friends reached out, having heard conflicting stories and seeking clarity. One father, whose daughter had been friends with Emma since elementary school, invited me for a beer and shared that his own daughter had been uncomfortable with the lies mine had been telling for months. Kids talk, he explained. My Amanda knew something was off when Emma kept making excuses about why you were not at certain events when she knew you were supposed to be back from business trips. Jennifer Tucker and I continued our occasional meetings, providing each other unique understanding that even well-intentioned friends could not offer. She shared that her company's board had launched an ethics investigation into James after she filed for divorce, citing his affair with a subordinate. They take that kind of thing seriously these days, she noted with satisfaction, especially with all the documentation we have. 3 months into the divorce proceedings, the legal tide had turned decisively in my favor. Sarah's attempts to challenge the prenuptial agreement failed, with the judge ruling that the infidelity clause was valid and enforceable, given the overwhelming evidence. Her financial claims were significantly limited, and she was ordered to return the funds she had diverted from our joint accounts. The reality of her situation began to sink in. The lifestyle she had envisioned with James was evaporating. His professional reputation was damaged by the ethics investigation, leading to his resignation before formal termination. Their relationship, built on deception and fantasy, struggled under the harsh light of consequences. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding. A new job opportunity arose in Colorado, a fresh start in a different state with a company that had been recruiting me for years. After much consideration, I accepted the position. The substantial salary increase and signing bonus would help establish my new life, and the physical distance would provide emotional space from the wreckage of my marriage. I listed our family home for sale, purchasing a smaller but modern condominium in Denver that would become my new beginning. As I packed up 20 years of memories, separating what to keep from what to leave behind, the process became unexpectedly therapeutic. 6 months after discovering Sarah's betrayal, the divorce was finalized. I attended the final hearing alone, Sarah represented only by her attorney. The terms largely reflected the prenuptial agreement, with some concessions I had voluntarily made regarding personal property division. The judge commended both parties for reaching resolution without prolonged litigation, unaware of how hard-fought each concession had been. That evening I received a text message from Lily, the first direct communication from either daughter in weeks that was not accusatory or manipulative. Dad, I know things are really messed up between us. I miss how things used to be. I am sorry for my part in hurting you. I read the message multiple times, emotions warring within me. part of me yearned to immediately reconcile to reclaim some fragment of the family I had lost. Another part remained wary of being manipulated again. After careful consideration, I responded, "Thank you for reaching out. This has been painful for everyone. I am moving to Colorado next month for a new job, but I am open to talking when you are ready for an honest conversation." Her reply came quickly. "I would like that." It was a tiny seedling of potential reconciliation, too fragile to bear the weight of expectations, but offering a glimmer of possibility for the future. As I completed my final packing and prepared for the cross-country move, I reflected on the painful lessons of the past 6 months. I had learned that trust, once fundamentally broken, cannot be casually repaired. I had discovered reserves of strength I never knew I possessed. Most importantly, I had learned that valuing myself enough to walk away from betrayal was not selfish, but necessary. The experience had transformed me. The pain remained, but alongside it grew a renewed sense of self-worth and clarity about what I would and would not accept in my relationships. I had lost my family as I knew it, but in the process I had reclaimed myself. What was your reaction to my story? Have you ever had to completely rebuild your life after betrayal? Drop a comment below. Hit the subscribe button if my story resonated with you, and give this video a thumbs up if you believe I made the right choice. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most necessary beginnings. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the strength to stand up for yourself when life tests your limits.